organisms and the cell wall ruptures. On the other end, the earliest mosses evolved from aquatic algae at some point hundreds of millions of years ago, but it would be absurd to try to identify the exact moment of this innovation, or even the speciation of the guest on my windowsill. This slipperiness easily spilled over into other questions. Could a moss be meaningfully separated from its surroundings? Was a moss spore considered alive? What about a moss that was frozen, like the one from Antarctica that was brought back to life after 1,500 years? Even outside extreme conditions, mosses complicate the idea of uniform time, with the ability of some species to go dormant for more than a decade without water. Under the right circumstances, they will revive. It was this very quality, as Kimmerer mentioned in a 2020 interview in The Believer, that made moss especially worth paying attention to during the COVID-19 pandemic. Noting that her students took inspiration from moss's rootedness and dormancy, Kimmerer suggested that these plants could teach humans how to inhabit this historical moment. The moss arrived in my apartment around the time I started thinking about this book. It was still growing when I finished. True, it will probably not live in that spot for 5,000 years, as has one moss shelf on Elephant Island in Antarctica. But in the long meantime, it has taken in 3 years of sunlight, breathed 3 years of air, and witnessed 3 years of me at the kitchen table. Like an emissary from somewhere outside clock time, it has populated my mind with questions of porousness and response, of inside and outside, of potentiality and immanence. Most of all, it has been a reminder of time. Not the monolithic, empty substance imagined to wash over each of us alone, but the kind that starts and stops, bubbles up, collects in the cracks, and folds into mountains. It is the kind that waits for the right conditions, that holds always the ability to begin something new. Imagine you're at a bookstore. In one section are time management books that give advice for adapting to a general sense of time scarcity and a world always speeding up, either counting and measuring your bits of time more effectively or buying time from other people. In a different section, you find cultural histories of how we came to see time the way we do, and philosophical inquiries into what time even is. If you're scrabbling for time and feeling burned out, which section would you turn to? It would seem to make sense to look in the first section, which is more directly concerned with everyday life and practical reality. Ironically, there never seems to be enough time to do something as idle as contemplate the very nature of time. But what I want to suggest is that some of the answers we might seek in the first section live in the second. That's because without exploring the social and material roots of the idea that time is money, we risk entrenching a language about time that is itself part of the problem. Consider the difference between work-life balance and the notion of leisure outlined by the German Catholic philosopher Joseph Pieper in his 1948 book, Leisure, the Basis of Culture. In Work, he writes, time is horizontal, a pattern of forward-leaning labor time punctuated by little gaps of rest that simply refresh us for more work. For Pieper, those little gaps are not leisure. True leisure, instead, exists on a vertical axis of time, one whose totality cuts through or negates the entire dimension of workaday time, running at right angles to work. If such moments happen to refresh us for work, that is merely secondary. Leisure does not exist for the sake of work, Pieper wrote. However much strength it may give a man to work, the point of leisure is not to be a restorative, a pick-me-up, whether mental or physical. And though it give new strength, mentally and physically and spiritually too, that is not the point. Pieper's distinction strikes an intuitive chord for me, as it probably does for anyone else who suspects that productivity is not the ultimate measure of the meaning or value of time. To imagine a different point means also imagining a life, identity, and source of meaning outside the world of work and profit. I think the reason most people see time as money is not that they want to, but that they have to. This modern view of time can't be extricated from the wage relationship, the necessity of selling your time, which, as common and unquestionable as it seems now, is as historically specific as any other method.